are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you. Thanks so much for having me on.
No, sure thing. So today we're going to be talking about your documentary, Happy Campers. And I gotta say, I think that my wife and friends say that I am a documentary buff. I really do love documentaries, no matter the topic. If it's interesting, I sit down and watch it because I think learning and getting to know more things about anything is good. Knowledge is power. I love the take on your documentary because it's really unique. It's really different. Does not feel like you're only asking questions to the people around. It's their story. It's a story of that a camping site. What inspired you to bring this story to fruition? Because if I'm not mistaken, you are the everything in the film.
Yes. Yes. I was the everything. That's a
the
good way
the,
to
the
put
everything of the film. So what inspired you to bring these unique stories and these unique people, because they are different of what we see day-to-day basis, but what inspired you?
Sure. Well, I mean, how it really started was I was out taking photographs one day. My dad lives on that part of the eastern shore of Maryland, and Chincoteague Island is a place I grew up going, and I was very familiar with it. And I just was out taking photos and wandered into this place. And what struck me was the houses. And I say houses, but they were basically RVs that had not moved in decades, most of them. I mean, there was some new, like really beautiful, fifth wheel, or park models, but most of them were like these great old campers that people had just decorated with crabs and stuff. And, they had flower beds and signs, and everyone had their first name on them. That's what killed me. It was like, this is John and Mary's. I was like, oh, okay. You must know who they are if you live here. And so I went back probably a decade later, and I went in the summer when all the people were there, and it was just amazing. And I am a big fan of things that have lots of value, but you can't really put a price tag on it. I don't gravitate toward like fancy cars and, big houses and things like that don't impress me. What impresses me more is just like if I go to a city and there's like a really great bar that's been there for forever. I like those kinds of places. And this place had that feeling. It had the feeling of a place that had a fabric, that had been woven over many decades.
That's amazing. Actually, here in my little 100 times 35 island, we have so many places here in Puerto Rico that are still have the structures that are like from decades ago, and they try to maintain them to keep that history in it. And being the fact that this story of these people are that they want to do a development. I imagine that the development probably is already up and running or still in process. But seeing how each and one of these families have their own story behind it's so unique, it's so interesting. And how long did it take you to bring all of this together? Because I know some documentaries take quite a while, but in this case you had, I imagine, a timeline due to that they had to move for the development. But how long did it take you to bring this documentary to fruition?
Well, our finishing schedule was protracted because of COVID. I had finished filming before COVID hit, and then we were all stuck in the house for forever. And it was very difficult to get funding. Catapult was very supportive of us, but it was very difficult to get other people interested in it. And I suspect maybe that has something to do with the politics of our country right now. But it also was very, very difficult to create a structure that, walks away from the traditional doc structure. And I'm just like you, I will watch anything. I will watch the sleaziest stuff about some, murderer or some cult group, and then I'll watch, Frontline religiously, So, I do it all. I love all of it. But what I wanted to make had more of a feeling than the traditional story, and I wanted people to have an experience, and so it was very difficult because it was very hard to get feedback and know if we were in the right place. And yeah, it was hard. It was just hard. And without funding, it was pretty much my money for a long time.
Okay.
So I have some very understanding editors that let me pay them in dribs and drabs. And then once we got to finish, we knew exactly what we wanted. We knew that sound was a huge part of it. It took a good, I think we spent 6 months just on sound design because the sound was such a big part of the environment.
And wanted to ask, because being the fact that you took a different route in what normally a documentary goes, normally it's like a person is sitting down, or there's a narrator behind it, or there's the guest is in front of you and they're talking about, let's say, for example, in this case, first person in my head, it's family members of Michael Jackson, and you just have them right there in questions, and then there's B-roll footage and whatnot. But in this case, you wanted to do something different. How getting to the point that you mentioned about editors and everything, how did it work to get all of this to sound and feel like somewhat of a linear story? Because there's still a story to show in the film. So how difficult was it with your editors, going on that back and forth, especially that you mentioned that COVID was part of the production. How was it, that back and forth between you and the editors?
It was difficult, and I had amazing editors. Laura Israel has made several of her own films. John Young and I have worked together in advertising for many, many years. We know each other really well. We all like the same things. And I specifically picked John and Laura as a combination because Laura does these very, I don't know what the word is exactly, but these very like thoughtful, slower edits that are like beautiful. And she knows exactly what combinations of things. She has an amazing sense of timing, but it's a little more mellow than what John and I would normally do because we're used to working in advertising and everything's just choppy and fun and funny. And then Laura got busy on another film, and John and I kind of took over, and we made a very hard decision at some point that, the people we did do exactly what you described. We sat people down and we said, well, what is it about this place that you love? And they would say, oh, it's great. Your neighbors help you out. And if you can't pay the light bill, you can go to your friend's house, and, everyone's so friendly and it's all great. And it's a proper community. And that was nice. But I had this epiphany in the middle of the night. I often do not sleep. And I thought, well, we shouldn't explain it. People should just feel it, which made it 10 times harder because then we went back through and pulled all of the like explanatory revelation out of it. And we just said, we made these rules for ourselves, like they have to be telling a story about something that meant something to them there. And there weren't that many. So then we had to kind of change the editing style to really let those stories breathe. And it actually helped the film. It helped the film to slow it down and to take a lot of stuff out. And John and I will still go to screenings and we'll look at it and we'll go, it seems so easy now. It seems to make sense now. But there were many dark days where we just sat in a room together going like, oh, what if we move that over here? Or what if we move that over there? There was a lot of that.
And I did notice what you mentioned about the sound design. The sound design sounds amazing, phenomenal. I think that one of my favorite scenes of the documentary is, I think it's mostly at the beginning, that there is one of the people that lived there had like a bunch of like cans.
Oh, the bean cannon.
Yeah. And the thing is that when I heard the the first sound, I was like, okay. And then when I saw him, I'm like, nah, it's not him. When he goes ahead and does shaking the rattle can and everything, I was like, whoa, okay. And it felt so nice because when he sees the camera, he's like, I'm not doing it, you know.
Right, right.
But the
Well,
fact that you can hear the crisp of the cannon plus what's going on in the background, that's amazing. How you guys got to do that? Because I imagine that that was pretty difficult.
it was a lot of work. Well, and I'll tell you, when you're there in that environment, what you hear is everything. You hear air conditioners and screen doors slamming and people popping the top off their cans and fishing and boats are going by and there's flagpoles, that sound of the
Yeah, the rattling sound.
yeah, that rattling sound against the flagpole that was there. There were birds. There was everything. And it's very, very noisy. But what I said to Matt Davies, who was our sound designer, I did make a very concerted effort to keep the sound as clean as possible. So, like, I would shut air conditioners off, I would shut radios off. People were not happy with me, but I did it. And then I went around with a Zoom and I recorded all of the individual sounds. Because what I said to him was like, it's never quiet in there, but it's peaceful because all of the sounds that you hear are sounds that remind you of summer and they remind you of like a place that you want to be. So we have to rebuild it all. And I think at some point he probably had 70 tracks of sound design.
Oh wow.
It was insane. I mean, really what he did was incredible. And then I helped him organize it. I would say, okay, well, these are all the times like in the morning when it's kind of quiet. And then I made this crazy map for him. I said, like, when you're at this person's house, it's going to sound like this. And this lady had a Purple Martin house. So it's that chatter of the birds all the time. And some of it's like in the background, but people laugh and they say, were there that many seagulls? And I was like, well, we may have added a few. Yeah, but we want you to the sound is a clue also as to where you are. So you have to have that feeling. You have to that slam of the screen door is such a summer sound. Those old wooden screen doors. It's such a great sound and things like that. Or like when someone pulls a can out of a cooler. That icy sound. There's so many good things like that that are very tactile and. I mean, to me, that's half the filmmaking at least for this project.
That's amazing. So Amy, I gotta thank you so much, really, for giving us the time to talk about Happy Campers, and I hope everybody enjoys the film as much as I did as well. And thank you very much for giving us the time to talk about the film.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.